Senator Roy Blunt. Senator, welcome back to Big 550 KTRS.
Hey, McGraw, it's good to be with you this morning, and I was there last night, and I think my prediction that the president may have overshot the setting by calling so much attention to this speech by having a joint session of Congress. I think that speech could have been made lots of places, and it probably didn't meet the criteria of let's get the whole Congress and the whole country together to hear the proposals that I've been making for the last he's been making for the last 2.5 years. So I saw not much new there. Some expansion on the idea that somehow we're not going to pay into the Social Security Trust Fund, even though it's now a trust fund that clearly has challenges. But it looked like to me it was a lot of the $800 billion stimulus package and a $450 billion sequel.
So you're saying you don't like the payroll tax cut extension, and it looks like it's more and it's extended. You don't like that for the employers and the employees?
I really don't. We've done it for a year. We've added no jobs in the last year. It's not a job creator, but it certainly does create a bigger problem for the already troubled Social Security Trust Fund. So how we gain by not paying into the Social Security Trust Fund is a mystery to me. And he proposes we actually up the ante to where instead of an exemption of the first $1,000 or whatever it was this year, that it's now you cut the rate in half for both the employer and the employee. It's like robbing Medicare to start Obamacare. Taking money from Social Security is the shortest of short-term fixes that creates even a bigger long-term problem. So, one of the reasons Social Security has always worked is if you paid in, you drew out. And now, for the first time this year, and we said, well, you could draw out and not pay in. I think that's the problem when you make these short. Let's do this for a year. It's like we always had this pressure in high gasoline cost times. Well, let's not collect the Federal Highway Trust Fund for 90 days. And I always said, well, if you stop collecting the trust fund, you don't have any money to maintain the highways, and how do you ever start again? What makes you think that 90 days from now it's going to be a better situation for travelers than it is today? And so that's one of many things that I think the president's just recycling old ideas that didn't work when we tried them the first time.
But I thought tax cuts of any kind would be good to spur on more spending, which would then spur on more jobs and more sales and more taxes.
Well, I don't think that's right. I think encouraging people to take a risk in small business by not having too high a tax rate encourages job creation. But under that same theory, you've got the same theory there, McGraw, or at least that's the same theory that the Secretary of Agriculture had the other day when he said food stamps were a great job creator. Well, if our job creators are extended unemployment, food stamps, and not paying into Social Security, I think that's an indication of just how much trouble the economy and the country must be in.
Was there anything in last night's speech that you agreed with?
Well, the creating trade opportunities I thought was a good idea. I'd like to see more of his idea on what we can do to encourage employers to hire veterans. Except for that, I really didn't see anything there that it wasn't just kind of stimulus too. This idea of infrastructure projects. Well, if we want infrastructure projects, let's figure out how to extend the highway bill and the FAA bill, rather than create a new, totally controlled by Obama package of the president will decide what projects are worthwhile and what aren't, as opposed to the states deciding with the highway funds. We're at the end of the federal highway bill at the end of this month. That's the way to do infrastructure. We're at the end of the Federal Aviation Authority last month. Remember, we had a 4-day shutdown of the FAA and all those airport construction projects. I think, frankly, it's just nonsense talking about how the administration will decide what school buildings need to be renovated or what bridges need to be built when you've got the normal programs running out of authority and the president continues and the Senate of the United States continues not to do the job that needs to be done for these programs to work. What the president talked about last night, in almost all cases, I believe will not become law, but he didn't talk about the things that could be done right now, the things I just mentioned. Let's continue to have a Federal Transportation Act. Let's continue to have some running of the St. Louis airport within 7 miles of where you're sitting right now, instead of talking about things that are not likely to happen.
Senator Roy Blunt, last question for you. How are you going to spend Sunday, the 10th anniversary of 9/11?
Ian, I'm at this point, I'm still scheduled to go to the 9/11 ceremony at the cathedral. I don't know what's going to happen between now and Sunday that I may be involved in. You know, we had an Intel committee briefing yesterday, only a few hours before the rest of the country heard about these credible sources on what may happen in Washington and New York regarding terrorist activity over the next few days. And I'm going to be following up on that today as a member of the Intelligence Committee, and we'll see how the weekend goes.
Is there anything you can tell us about those hearings that you were in?
You know, there's really nothing to speak. There's a little more than was publicly available, but within hours of the country finding out. Now, one good thing that the administration did, and it shows our intelligence service is working more as we would want it to, they didn't find out until night before last. The next morning, the Intel Committee in the House and the Senate was notified. And later that day, as you sent out an alert to the various police agencies, particularly in New York and Washington, obviously everybody in the country was going to hear essentially a lot of what others already know, that there's a credible threat, and we were anticipating that threat, but it became credible when some new information became available about specific individuals, and so there'll be a state of heightened alert, at least in New York and Washington, for the next several days. But both those cities are always need to be pretty alert these days anyway. You know, we do have enemies in the world, and we need to be aware that they would like to do us harm, particularly on the 10th anniversary of 9/11.
Missouri Senator Roy Blunt. Senator, thanks for checking in. Have yourself a good and safe weekend.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.